This segment sponsored by Foster Financial. Welcome back to Wealth Wednesday with Foster Financial, where we provide you with holistic financial advice. And joining me today is Caleb Doane, their Vice President. Hello and
Hi.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good morning.
Yes. Okay, so we've been talking about misconceptions in different areas of finance. And today we're going to hone in on the retirement side. And as you being someone who works with so many people who retire and seek your advice, you often hear a phrase, what is it?
I'll spend less money in retirement.
I'll spend less money in retirement. I love that. Okay, so why is this such a big misconception?
Yeah, I think because the amount that people truly end up spending in retirement often is relatively similar to what they spend every year. Right. The few years before they ended up retiring. There's some notable exceptions with, maybe if someone's mortgage gets paid off or something like that close to retirement, obviously that drops off. But a lot of the other expenses that people have stay relatively the same, or, they might go down in one area and just go up in another area.
Right, because I was going to say, could we argue the fact that maybe because you're retired, you're doing more spending because you have more time?
Yeah,
is that a possibility?
Exactly. Yeah, you're no longer bound by, the 3 weeks of PTO or something like that you got while you're working. So a lot of times people will spend a lot more on traveling. Maybe they spend a little bit less on gas, commuting to and from work or something like that, but that travel expense goes up. Maybe they're not spending as much in retirement on kids because they're now grown and out of the house, but then grandkids come pretty soon after that, and you love to spoil the grandkids.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of expenses that end up kind of evening out a little bit there, and so we don't want to factor in a massive reduction in expenses as soon as somebody retires, because you don't want to reduce your standard of living in retirement if you don't want to. You don't want to all of a sudden work so much for retirement and then realize, hey, I used to go out to eat 3 or 4 times a month. Now I feel like I can only do it one time a month. When you're retired, we want to be able to do a lot of those things that you plan for.
Right, exactly. Enjoy that time. And so how can people kind of plan in advance to it's a guessing game essentially, because you don't know where you're going to be when you're retired financially, but how can people kind of set that expectation?
Yeah, so when we do a financial plan for clients, we do a really in-depth cash flow analysis, and we'll update that the closer that they get to retirement to really try to back in to the amount of money that they need to live comfortably and maintain their same standard of living all throughout retirement. Some people will come to us and they'll say, hey, I think I only need $50,000 a year to kind of be satisfied with my lifestyle in retirement. And we'll look at things and say, well, you know what, you're making, $150 right now. We're spending this much, or we're saving this much in your 401k. So it looks like you're actually living off of maybe $100,000 right now. What expenses are you planning on cutting out in retirement? They start to look at it and they're like, well, none of these. I want to keep doing everything that we're doing right now. And so then we need to increase that budget for retirement. So maybe that means we save a little bit more now. Maybe that means we work an extra year or something like that. But we really want to be prepared for that ahead of time, because oftentimes people aren't spending too much less in retirement than what they were while they were working.
Right. So do you see people sometimes choosing, though, to downsize just because it makes more sense? Like maybe they have a huge home that they grew, their family in, and now they don't need as much space, or like you said, a car could be paid off. What other things do you see that could really make an impact in lowering the cost?
Yeah. Well, downsizing, it's good that you bring that up, because that is something that people will look at in retirement. But that is another thing that sometimes people are surprised by. They have a 4-bed, 3-bath house that they grew their family in, and maybe they're looking to downsize now. A lot of times when they end up downsizing, maybe to a ranch or something like that, it ends up being pretty close to the same cost that they sell their house for.
Okay.
And so that's another thing. If people think that they're going to be able to sell a house for, $600,000, they're going to be able to buy a house for $300,000 and stay in it for all of retirement. Sometimes that doesn't happen either. And so we always temper expectations with that too. But there are true expenses that do drop off sometimes in retirement. A A lot of people try to have their mortgage paid off close to retirement. Maybe they were putting kids through college and then that eventually drops off. So there are some of those expenses that drop off. Vehicles, I mean, you're probably going to need a vehicle in retirement too, one or two. And so we still plan for those in the financial plan. But it's always good to get ahead of those things because you don't want to all of a sudden be surprised by your cost of living being higher than what you thought it was. And you set, too small of a goal with that retirement income. You don't want to have to pinch pennies when you're in retirement. And so the earlier we can plan for that, the better you end up being. Yeah.
So what would you recommend the proper time to start before retirement? How many years or decades before retirement should people really start to put this plan together? Yeah,
I mean, certainly the earlier the better is always helpful because we can make little tweaks there. But also another big point is if you're 15 years or less out from retirement, that's still enough time for us to make some tweaks to have some really meaningful impact in retirement. But also you're close enough where we can make really good estimates on what your standard of living needs to be in retirement. So that can kind of be a really key time to do some financial planning too.
All right, well, we know where to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you.
And if you would like some more information about Foster Financial and also start this conversation, book a free consultation that they offer, and you can actually get ahead of the game when it comes to planning for your retirement. And I'll see you after the break. This segment sponsored by Foster Financial.